Welcome. Thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind giving us a like, and consider going ahead and subscribing as well, that would be fantastic. And if you really want to go the extra mile, go down to the description below and click the Patreon link. Lots of cool stuff going on there. As always, I love you, and enjoy the show, guys.
Memories of Creature 88. A story by user RegalLegalEagle. Chapter 19. Change in Leadership. Vincent winced and let out a groan as the Yervish medic pulled the needle free.
You're only delaying the inevitable. You need to seek treatment for the wounds.
You have some fractures and internal bleeding. Though minor, it will likely set you back a few days in the hospital.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice?
Vincent laughed and saw the confusion on the medic's face.
Never mind. I appreciate the help. How's Mong?
He nodded at the howler sitting across from him in the tram. Patrol had sent a small med team to meet them at the top of the secret city lift, and he still wasn't sure where it came out.
She'll be all right. It's not life-threatening. They've already stopped the internal bleeding and treated the burn. With proper physical therapy and EWT, she'll be walking full speed end of the month, running by the end of the next.
Vincent shook his head a little as he thought about that. At times he forgot how entirely different the energy weapons were. They could kill you sure enough in the moment, and they had very similar functionality to firearms, but they didn't do the same kind of long-lasting damage. If he put a bullet into a felon's leg and it didn't kill him, there was a chance he'd never walk right again. He wasn't sure if that was really a pro or a con on either side. Frey was fine, Kirana as well. If it weren't for the medic patching up Mong's legs, she looked ready to head back out. Vincent stood up, feeling the painkiller start to make everything a little numb, but without really messing with his mind. It was good stuff. More than 2 doses in a day and it would apparently kill him. They only used it for zoo animals and, of course, him. He had yet to ask why zoo animals needed to be sharp-minded, but perhaps it was just a chemical thing. Either way, he waved Frey and Kirana over, speaking with them quietly at the back of the tram while Mong was tended to. The 3 of you were a great help, but what you were doing was extremely dangerous.
You think I didn't know that?
Frey asked before Vincent just looked more closely at Kirana.
She warned me, too. I wanted to help even so.
All right, Vincent nodded and sighed. The Ormani were protecting their own, and giving them authority might not be the best idea, but after seeing the preacher, he realized he'd need as much help as possible. While he wasn't ready to ask Mach for use of his Satyr security force, it might be time to start deputizing citizens. Then he realized that might not be a thing here. He needed to find out. The preacher is an obvious threat. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to need to take him out. I might need help again that's not Yervish. Mong is out for now, and I don't want just 2 of you working on this. If I can somehow get you guys better equipment and compensation, are you willing to recruit?
Kirana smiled and nodded readily. Yes, this is what I wanted, to help. If the citizens of the lower sectors want to volunteer to make their society better, then they should have a way to do it. I know patrol is only for Yervish, but there needs to be another option.
It wasn't the worst idea Vincent had heard. All right. Well, I need to go talk to the council now, so I'll see what I can do. Vincent looked down at the Yervish at the exit to the tram. You'll take my new friends to the local hospital and look after them, right?
That is the plan, Shade.
Vincent still wasn't sure if he should correct them all. Some didn't seem to understand they were basically calling him a soulless, evil, child-eating spawn out of hell every time they said that.
All right, I'll see you there sooner or later. Hopefully sooner. The medic was right. You need to rest up.
Frey said with a nod as Vincent laughed once more.
Yeah, we'll see.
He didn't want to spoil the thought for them. Instead, he walked up and gave Mong a pat on the shoulder. They'll get you back in shape in no time. You did good today. You're a very strong citizen who brings lots of benefits to her society. It was something he'd heard used in some Yervish training video months ago. She grinned wide as he said it.
You think so? Thank you, Creature 88.
He was about to tell her to call him Vincent, but he stopped. Was part of her decision to follow him because she saw him as more than an individual? He wasn't sure, so he just smiled and gave her shoulder another pat before turning to walk out of the tram. As he stepped outside, he was hit with a gust of wind and faced with nothing but sky. It took him a moment to process that they were at the edge of one of the drops. While the lower sectors spread out, the upper sectors got smaller and smaller, so with some places instead of neighboring sectors separated by a gap, there wasn't anything. The constant shifting of environments was always strange in the city. He spotted the handrail and was soon walking around the edge of the drop. They were back up in Sector 2, only a few blocks from Patrol HQ, but on one of the service walkways used to check pipes and the like. The entrance to the tram platform was well hidden, but now he knew how to find it. Could be useful. The two patrol walking with him were quiet. They hadn't asked him to hand over his weapon, but for some reason he felt like they were about to arrest him. But now the council was fully aware of his encrypted day and they wanted to talk with him. What did they suspect? What could they prove? These were the thoughts that filled his mind until they walked into the much more quiet back entrance to the HQ. To his relief, the other two nodded to him and peeled off, heading back to the main floor, leaving him alone. He stepped into the lift and hit the button for the top floor, still expecting something to happen. What was he truly worried about? They were on his side, supposedly. It seemed unlikely the wardens would have too many more people on the council, but if they'd corrupted Letero, who else should he look at? The security detail at the top nodded to him, and once more no one mentioned his gun, so he walked on through, opening the door to the council room as he heard a quiet conversation immediately stop.
Creature 88, I hope the citizens who assisted you are all right.
Council Chair Cayuna was now sitting in the center, and sitting on the far right of the council panel was a new Yervish he didn't recognize. I'm told she'll be fine. Supreme Council Chair Cayuna? She nodded.
We voted on it while you were sleeping. For now, we are joined by Provisional Council Chair Mariva.
She motioned at the new Yervish. He'd noticed, and Vincent shared a nod with the new male Yervish.
Now then, what is it you discovered of Letero's death?
He arched a brow at that. Even if the memories were encrypted, they'd know what happened to Letero. It was an odd question. Unless that was the point. I found him dead in one of his gardens. I suspect that the organization that attacked me at the chem lab... Alleged organization. We're still not confident such an organization exists. Vincent glanced at Mariva, who'd said that. Was he cut from the same cloth as Letero? A new warden in disguise? Or maybe just an aggressive idiot? Politics appealed to many of those. I found proof that someone entered the garden. There was a blind spot the security was previously unaware of. Are you telling me that this wasn't the work of an obviously well-organized assassin? Or group of assassins? You think this highly secure home and prison would be infiltrated by a random felon who then murdered Letero? Just bypassed the advanced security system on a whim?
We are not actually confident that his death was in fact homicide. There's a strong possibility his death was a suicide.
Vincent stared at Cayuna. She hadn't been insane so far as he was trying to process what she had just said. I'm sorry. Are you suggesting that he committed suicide by cutting himself hundreds of times, even in areas he couldn't easily reach, from an angle of attack clearly not indicative of self-inflicted wounds, and in fact in such a way that he'd lose too much blood to continue cutting himself to such an extent? How is that your conclusion? He wanted to be sure he got that right. Cayuna pressed her hands together then.
I understand your confusion, but in our culture his death is reminiscent of a style of ritualistic suicide committed by someone else on a willing person. Perhaps willing isn't the right word. She paused and seemed to think it over. Letero was a very old-fashioned Yervish. There's a chance he felt responsible for the deterioration of our lower sectors and exploited a security flaw to make this happen.
No, Vincent said flat out. Letero was clearly a fighter. He adjusted the security settings to only allow me entrance and wanted to make sure I found the body first so no one could tamper with it. Do you think he'd ask me, the Shade, who he hated and has no understanding of your culture, if he was offing himself in this fashion? Without a suicide note. Cayuna spread her hands.
This is my stance, but it remains enough of a serious issue that we're undecided on the matter. But we need to discuss something else. Did the house security tell you anything when you entered?"
"Can't you just watch my memories?" he asked, feigning ignorance.
"Of course. However, it seems like your set of memories were—"
Cayuna was about to tell him they were encrypted when the Yervish immediately to her left cut her off. "We want to see if your actual account matches up with what we saw. There was some interference." Then she glared at Cayuna, who stared back. There was some sort of unspoken battle between their glares for a look, before Cayuna finally nodded and apparently backed down.
"Yes, I suppose interference is the best way to describe it."
So she wanted to come clean and the others didn't. Mock was right. In general, they had no desire to reveal to him their shortcomings. It mentioned something about security features, and I saw that video from Letero detailing his lack of trust in everyone but me because, all things aside, I'd never betray the citizens or their trust, so he was going to take steps to aid me. Vincent shrugged. "I don't see why that matters." "Did you—" The one who'd cut Cayuna off started and stopped. "Was there anything interesting you found out about the prison?" Vincent shrugged. "Some high-profile prisoners and apparently Letero's freaky dog." "Dog?" That was the new guy, Mariva. "Sorry, creature from my home planet. The four-legged creature that kept trying to lick me through the force field." "Oh, yes, the Takhog. Extremely loyal to their owners and highly dangerous to everything else. Why Letero thought it was a good pet for Supreme Council Chair, I'll never know." Mariva shook his head at the thought. Apparently, he wasn't exactly the same as Letero. "Speaking of, I'd like to talk to them again. It seems like Letero confided in them. Perhaps there's more I could learn from them about my work." They looked around at each other, seeming to think it over without talking somehow. He was looking for subtle nods and the like, but either they were more subtle than he could detect, or he was looking for the wrong thing, because he had no idea how they reached a decision before Cayuna spoke up.
"I don't see why that can't be arranged. Now that the security flaw has been fixed, the prison is entirely safe."
"That's good, since it doesn't have an owner currently. What if I were to reside there?" Maybe he could push his luck. "Absolutely not." That was quick. Which one had said that? "A detective living in the Supreme Council Chair's residence? Not possible." Who was that? "You're vastly overstepping your bounds, Creature 88, despite how much you've done." Vincent wasn't even fully aware who was saying what until Cayuna raised her hands to stop the others, which saved him from trying to figure out who had said what.
"Creature 88, you're an incredible detective and a very valuable asset to the patrol, but you're still a detective. The Union provides reasonable accommodations for citizens based on their jobs. You've only been here for a year and are not technically a citizen. To be given control of such an estate so quickly, it sets a bad precedent. I will allow you full access to my new home, however, and make sure you're listed in the security system, but I do expect you to call first." He had full access anyway, but they either didn't know that or didn't want to tell him. "I suppose that's more than enough. Did that glass with the unknown prince bring back any leads?" Cayuna shook her head. "Either the prints are from someone not in the system, or it's a creature that doesn't have prints that are easily distinguished." "I don't think it was necessary to even check. Letero was allowed guests, obviously. What connection would a guest from days ago have to his death?" This was said by Mariva, and Vincent was beginning to suspect the new chairman was just an aggressive idiot. Maybe they came from the Commando Corps instead of patrol. "Can we talk about the lower sectors now?" Vincent changed the subject. "Certainly. What do you wish to address?" Cayuna asked. "There's a howler." "We don't use terms like that regarding Union species, Shade. They're Ortelians." The Yervish to Cayuna's left cut him off. "You just called me a child-eating evil spirit, and you correct me about the name for a Union species?" "You're not a Union species, technically speaking." Vincent opened his mouth and then thought it over. It appeared she had won this round. Well, whatever. There was an Ortelian who calls himself the Preacher. He's advocating the citizens of the lower sectors kill patrol and offered a 30,000 credit reward for my head. "We're aware of the Preacher. He's nothing more than a nuisance, making himself rich by exploiting the felons of the underbelly." The other chairs looked at Mariva, who caught their glances. "Sorry, the lower sectors.
Apologies, fellow chairs, I'm too used to being with my fellow commandos. So he was indeed military. He's not just a nuisance, he's a huge problem. I was told a patrol team went missing.
We're working on it, Cuyuna said.
Right, but has there ever been a case of felons kidnapping an active patrol team? The council was quiet. He's inciting the violence we're seeing. Those who might normally be nothing but petty troublemakers are picking up weapons and trying to make money by killing what they see as a symbol of the Union's authority. That is a huge problem. When a movement like this has a charismatic voice, you don't call it a nuisance. You find the voice and silence it. I'd like your permission to dedicate whatever resources I need to track him down immediately.
Done.
Vincent was left blinking at Cuyuna while the others turned to stare at her.
Supreme Council Chair, any such measure requires a deep analysis by one of our statistical teams before we can dedicate such a blank check.
Perhaps the one to Cuyuna's left was the warden's spy.
I said it's done. While there are many decisions I will turn over to a general vote, there are some that I won't waste time on. As Supreme Chair, it is well within my authority to grant this to you, Creature 88.
She nodded at Vincent.
I, for one, give full trust to him and the AI's analysis of his value. No one knows the lower sectors better.
Speaking of, I'd also like to start an initiative to deputize citizens to act as security and assist the patrol. He tried out next.
That I'm not as sure of, Cuyuna said. When the Yervish secured their position within the Union in those early days, we became the sole military and security force for the Union at large. We are a symbol of authority and stability. Citizens know they can trust us. To let others in would potentially harm our image.
So we don't call them patrol. We make up a new name. I had Ortelian, a satyr, and a Vernic aid me down there. The Ormani are being attacked by large groups of organized felons. There are citizens who can clearly help us. He saw their looks for a moment and cursed in his head as he realized he'd spoiled the open secret for the Ormani. The Ormani? What do those pickpockets and scam artists have to do with this? Meriva again. I wanted to find out why their block was so clean of crime. Turns out they simply don't report it. But what I also found out is they have their own sort of honor system that drastically lowers crime anyway. The other felons are attacking them to try and break their grip on the blocks around them. I was assisting them when I got caught off from their volunteers. That was part of what started that whole incident.
You're seriously suggesting we give them any level of authority?
Cuyuna looked curious. Just a temporary measure. We make them members of, he shrugged, citizens' militia? No, that sounds too militarily oriented. Meriva shook his head and Vincent just continued. Whatever, I'm not great with the names. The point is we offer the citizens a chance to help police themselves, to work towards making the lower sectors a better place to live. I can't see why they'd say no since they live there. Right now, just the Ormani. They have a system in place and with support and funding could easily spread out a few blocks. It won't be much, but anything is better than nothing.
We'll vote on it after you leave. The idea is unusual, but I could see why it would be helpful.
Cuyuna nodded as she spoke. On top of that, I'd like funding for a small, more personal team of citizens, starting with the 3 who helped me today. I think that personally training a team of lower sector citizens to assist me would be incredibly valuable. They'll only be an extension of my authority by direct order and wouldn't patrol openly, just assist when I go down there. Cuyuna thought it over for a moment before nodding.
That I'll allow. No more than 12 members for right now, and you have to add another detective.
Vincent didn't even need to think about it. Harmacad. I like him. Just inform him that his CI Scarlet could use his help, and I'm sure he'll join.
You two share a CI? Cuyuna asked.
Not normally, no. She approached me in our lobby the last time I had a counselor's day. That's why you don't have any memories of it. He was going to have to get used to explaining away why they couldn't fact-check his memories now. It was new territory.
Ah,
she nodded, accepting his story as he smiled.
So you'll have a chance to move on the preacher and start forming your own personal team. We'll vote on creating an organization of volunteers in the lower sectors. Is there anything else?
Yes. As you'll soon see from my memories, whoever is behind all this has a large force of satyr working for them, and I might have stumbled across one of their hidden bases. He heard the surprise from around the council.
Why didn't you relay this sooner? Cayuna asked as she waved her hands to settle everyone down.
It didn't need to be said until now. I still don't know who's behind all this and how they have satyrs. One of the citizens who aided me tonight revealed that after a dragon dies of old age, their satyr are released from service. Perhaps these are mercenaries. I know that seems to go against their culture, but it's more likely than a dragon being behind all this, right? He could see the various looks cross their faces. Some obviously thought a dragon would be more likely, while others didn't like either idea. Cayuna soon spoke up.
We'll look into it and likely launch a raid on the location once we pinpoint it through your memories. Now, is there anything else?
Also, on my first day with the counselor, Mortician Kyra asked if she could have some of my body to test some sort of theory or experiment or whatever on. Do you mind if she takes some?
Cayuna thought that over. I'll limit it to one of your internal organs. The other hierarchy power consortiums would have a fit if we gave up too much of your biomass for a small experiment. Pharmaceuticals especially would protest since they use so much of your biomass for a wide variety of projects.
One internal organ. That's fine, I'll let her know. He might need her help soon, and he didn't want her to forget. He had what she wanted.
Well then, you're dismissed, Creature 88. I'll let you know how we vote on the other matter. Cayuna motioned for the door and he nodded, turning to leave. Oh, Creature 88. He glanced back. Since you've been so busy, we've hired you an assistant to track your operations and file your paperwork for you. I can tell you've been forgetting to do it, but haven't noticed the lack of superiors yelling at you about it.
Oh, you're right. I didn't notice. He tried to think back and realized that the LT hadn't yelled at him for not doing his reports like normal.
Which is again why we hired you an assistant. If it looks like someone has been in your office, that's all it is. No conspiracy. She smiled and he nodded before continuing out the door. Once outside, he stopped and thought it over.
Who the hell would be his assistant? He shrugged it off for now and headed to the lift. Once he was down in the basement, he walked through to the morgue, opening the door as he glanced around and then up as he saw Kyra reading something, only to sniff at the air and then look down at him with a big smile.
Shade! How unexpected.
I'm here to sync up. She walked along the ceiling and then down the far wall before pulling out the special-made drawer that had a black box reader in it. While she was doing that, he was pulling off his harness, jacket, holster, and indeed all his clothes until he was stripped naked. She looked confused for a moment until she saw the bruising all across his torso.
Ah, you're injured. Didn't feel like seeing a doctor?
Ha ha, Kyra, very funny. He hopped up on the metal body drawer then and shivered. Fuck, it's cold.
It's refrigerated. What did you expect?
Whatever. He leaned back, and as she pressed the button, he felt a pinch and grimace before calming down. The sinking was rather uneventful, and the moment it was done, he pulled up and off the needle before pressing the button to transmit. All right, they won't check this one since I'm going to die immediately. The council is okay with you taking my kidney.
Really?
Her eyes went wide and he saw her start to drool and tap her talons together in excitement. Yes, but just my kidney. Tell them it was for an experiment or something. Do you have another black box here?
Yes. They forgot to collect the last one after they brought your remains here, and I synced it. They've been busy with the chaos in the city.
He wasn't sure why she hissed some words and not others. If they remember, only give them that one. Hide this one. I might want it later. Same deal as before. This is just a taste, since you've been waiting so nicely for me. Got it?
You're so good to me,
she said with a big grin as she pulled out a needle. Don't forget to give them all my stuff. I'll want it when I wake up.
I'm not interested in your possessions, just your delicious flesh.
He saw her tongue lash out for a moment and he shuddered, but not from the cold as he set his head back down. I really have no clue how you haven't been caught yet. The last thing he heard was the spider, octopus, demon woman's evil laughter echoing through the morgue as she pressed the needle into his neck, and everything faded away. They were extremely expensive treatments to accelerate healing and get him back on patrol in a week, but that was considered wasteful. Any injuries that reduced his effectiveness were simply wiped out by killing his current body and waking up a new one. The shade is dead. Long live the shade were his last thoughts. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really do appreciate you. That's going to be it for this one today. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Go ahead and subscribe. It's kind of like subscription, but it's different. Oh, why thank you. Why only a good-ish evening? I want a good evening. Can I have a good one instead of a good-ish one? Anyway, guys, I will talk to you later. Thank you so much for being here. Tell me, what is your favorite fantasy... No, what was the first fantasy novel you ever read? I think mine was probably... I was very young. My mom actually read Narnia to me, and I started to learn to read from Narnia, and then I just read it myself. But that's one of my favorite books. I love C.S. Lewis. I think he's fantastic. I also really enjoy Ursula K. Le Guin. That was another one of the first fantasy novels I ever read, was The Wizard of Earthsea. It's just so good. Oh, man. And from her, I actually went on to read someone named Guy Gavriel Kay, who was her editor for a while, back in like the early 80s, I believe. And Guy Gavriel Kay has written one of the best books I've ever read, period, called Tigana, which is just, fuck, what a well-made book. Oh, man. Him and Steven Erikson have always just been so interesting as writers to me, because they take these concepts from, like, you know, novels and things like that from our world and really apply them in an almost like historical fantasy context. It's really neat. Anyway, guys, I appreciate you being here. Like, comment, subscribe. Go to the Patreon link in the description and also the Discord link. Lots of cool stuff going on. We're building a community, guys. We're past 8K. I can't believe it. On our way to 9 and then 10. Woo! Anyway, guys, thank you so much for being here for this one. I will see you next time. Thanks so much. And I love you. Bye!